through doors you didn't open. Turn around, scrub some floors, open some doors. In a world where there's no desire for heaven and no fear of hell, the one question left is, will you leave the world better than you found it? And certainly we can say that the Queen has left the world better than she found it. I told the bishop, this is my first and last time up, you know your name and you know what you're on to do. Folk know you, don't your name wouldn't be on the program. So there's no need of somebody getting up, calling you, talking about you. Get up, do what you got to do. If you don't, I found out something about the bishop working with him today. He can walk fast and most men run. If you're coming up at the wrong time, he will get up and sit you down. Because he's not just a bishop. He's the apodictic pope. Please come where your name appears on the program.
Good morning. I'm Mike Duggan. I have the honor to be the mayor of Detroit. And for the last 2 weeks, Detroit has been the center of an overwhelming emotional outpouring with the loss of our cherished daughter, Aretha Franklin. And for longtime Detroiters, that emotional connection goes back even before Aretha, to her father, Reverend C.L. Franklin, one of Detroit and America's great civil rights leaders. Reverend Franklin was chief organizer of the Detroit Walk to Freedom on June 23rd, 1963. 100,000 Detroiters marched down Woodward Avenue, led by Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Franklin, walking arm in arm in Detroit's largest civil rights event. And at the end of that march, at Cobo Hall in Detroit, Dr. King delivered his first I Have a Dream speech, 2 months before the historic speech in Washington, D.C. And so as I watched this week, as tens of thousands of people lined up outside the Charles Wright Museum, blocks-long lines waiting to pay their final respects to Aretha Franklin, I thought back to those long lines on Woodward behind Reverend C.L. Franklin 55 years ago and thought the Franklin family has had a huge impact on the city of Detroit for more than half a century. We all know that young Aretha got her musical start right here in Detroit at the New Bethel Baptist Church Gospel Choir, was making her first recordings by the time she was 14, and in each of her 17 top 10 hits, each time she soared, it felt like the people of Detroit soared with her because she never lost her connection to our city. And of course, along with the successes she had in her life, she also suffered real tragedy. And when you listened to the raw emotional power of that extraordinary voice, you could feel both great joy and great loss. When Aretha Franklin sang, it felt like the voice of Detroit, didn't it? Which I'm sure is why every place I've gone the past 2 weeks, all I get asked is, what is Detroit going to do to honor Aretha Franklin? And I want to talk about that today. Because as we talk to those close to her family, one of the themes that kept coming up was that Miss Franklin loved the Detroit River, that she lived her last months in the riverfront apartments, that she seemed to draw spiritual power from the river itself, and that one of her favorite places in the world is Shane Park. Now, if you don't know the history of Shane Park, it was a project started by Mayor Coleman Young in the 1980s. Because then, right, if you wanted to go to an outdoor concert in the 80s, you had to drive up to Pine Knob, an hour away. It's a beautiful facility, but wasn't accessible to this community. And Mayor Young said, Detroit is the center of music in Michigan. We're going to have our own outdoor concert setting. And so he went and took an abandoned barge dock site on Shane Avenue in the riverfront. And he said, that's where Detroit's going to have outdoor concerts. Now, I went to that first concert season in 1985. It was basically a stage and a bunch of blankets on a hill, right? That's the way it started. But even then, it felt special because it was ours. But over the next 5 years, Mayor Young built an amphitheater that could accommodate 6,000 people and a beautifully landscaped park that was an attraction to the city. And with the leadership of Shaida Mayusi, Shane Park has hosted many of America's great entertainers, Stevie Wonder and Jack White, Earth, Wind and Fire, Diana Ross, Run DMC, B.B. King, Ray Charles, and so many others. But the single largest event ever held was the 30th year anniversary of Shane Park, August 22nd, 2015. And the performer that evening was, of course, Aretha Franklin. And what makes Shane Park truly unique is we've kept to the original mission, that even with all those world-class performers, half of our concerts are either free at low-cost ticket, so it's a place that belongs to all Detroiters. And those concerts are now drawing nearly 100,000 concert goers a year. And anybody that was at last night's event knows it is now one of the finest outdoor music venues in the United States. And so I met with President Brenda Jones and talked to my partners on Detroit City Council. And today, it is with their strong and enthusiastic support that I can tell you that on Tuesday, I will be sending City Council a proposal to rename Shane Park. Our beautiful waterfront jewel will be Aretha Franklin Park. And when performers from generations to come from around the world come here, they'll be reminded that they are performing at the home of the Queen of Soul. God bless you.
And the mayor just got me.
Face another day. Taco Bell. Girl, let me give you all your respect. Did y'all enjoy this icon? She's an icon herself. Come on, make her feel loved in Greater Grace Temple, the city of David. Please receive one of the greatest voices for the urban community. One, amen. Not them yet. This is one of the greatest voices, not many of the greatest voices. We're going to adjust the program quickly at this time. This man has spoken out. He stood on the front line. He has been a man for the people, of the people. Please receive Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you, Bishop. To the Franklin family and to all of us gathered, Aretha Franklin was not only an unparalleled artist, she was a civil rights activist and freedom fighter. It is easy to celebrate the gifts that God gives. It is more difficult when someone uses those gifts in ways that enhances humanity. Aretha Franklin was given special gifts, but she used it in a special way. And she would not want us to celebrate her without talking about she stood for something. She never shamed us. She never disgraced us. She never made us make excuses for her. She represented the best in our community, and she fought for our community until the end. I first met Miss Franklin when I was a teenager. I'd become youth director of New York Operation Breadbasket, and she would come to the strategy meetings with Reverend Jackson. And I would hear the stories of how when Dr. Martin Luther King could make payroll, Harry Belafonte and Aretha Franklin went on an 11-city tour to raise money for Martin Luther King. A lot of artists hang up Dr. King's photo, but Aretha went and raised money and gave it and worked free. Her daddy marched with Dr. King, and she never stopped supporting. As the years went by and I developed National Action Network, and she would call my radio show and have me come to her affairs. She called me one day. She said, "Reverend Al, I want to send you something." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "What's your home address?" And she said it. About 3 days later, I got a check made out National Action Network signed by Aretha Franklin. I saw about a month later, I said, "You know, I was so blown away. I grew up looking up to you that I framed that check." She said, "Boy, don't you have a copy machine?" She said, "You don't know how I am with my bank accounts. You better cash that check in." But all of her life, she supported the causes. She was a feminist before feminism was popular. She was a civil rights activist when it wasn't popular. She gave us pride, and she gave us a regal bar to reach. And that's why we're all here. We don't all agree on everything, but we agree on Aretha. And she fought for everybody. I remember when we were used to picket, Charles Williams and all of us jumping on the record industry, she said, "Now y'all leave Clive Davis alone, he's one of the good ones." She loved Clive and said, "We got to remember what happened to the Irish and what happened to Jews and what happened to blacks." And that is why we remember her legacy because she sang a song for all of us. She was the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. If you track where we are, you can follow where Aretha had us. That's why when I look at her and James Brown, whose daughter's here, and others, who paid a price, that opened the door, but never forgot where they came from. She was rooted in the black church. She was bathed in the black church. And she took the black church downtown and made folks that didn't know what the Holy Ghost was shout in the middle of a concert. You never saw her perform without her doing gospel, because she never was a one to forget where she came from. And that's why we give her this great home going. We thank her for what she did with Dr. King. We thank her for what she's done with Reverend Jackson. We thank her for what she's done with all of us. And that is why, you know, the other Sunday on my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means. I say that because when word had went out that Miss Franklin passed, Trump said she used to work for me. No, she used to perform for you. She worked for us. Aretha never took orders from nobody but God. So Aretha, as you get your rest, my mother passed about 6 years ago. President Clinton, my mother and I had a deal. She said, I'll meet you on the other side. You live the way you're supposed to, and I'll see you in heaven. I said, well, Ma, they tell me there is no bodies in heaven, just spirits. How am I going to know you? I know her sons are. How will I know her? She said, I tell you, you meet me at the exchange counter. I said, exchange counter? What kind of exchange counter? She said, well, right after you get through the Golden Gates, there's an exchange counter. That's where you hand in your cross to pick up your crown. We watched Aretha bear her cross down here. She had to sing with a broken heart. She had to work when she didn't get paid. She was a black woman in a white man's world. She bared her cross. She fought a good fight. Now it's time to crown the queen. I'll see you at the exchange counter where you can now hand in your cross. Ain't no cats over there, Aretha. Hand in your cross and pick up your crown. As I take my seat, I've been asked to read this. Don't do that. Because I only have 5 minutes and y'all will make me go into something else. Dear friends and family of Aretha, Michelle and I extend our heartfelt sympathies to all of those who gathered in Detroit. And we join you in remembering and celebrating the life of the Queen of Soul. From a young age, Aretha Franklin rocked the world of anyone who had the pleasure of hearing her voice, whether bringing people together through thrilling intersections of genres or advancing important causes through the power of song. Aretha's work reflected the very best of the American story in all of its hope and heart, its boldness and its unmistakable beauty. In the example she set both as an artist and a citizen, Aretha embodied those most revered virtues of forgiveness and reconciliation, while the music she made captured some of our deepest human desires, namely affection and respect. And through her voice, her own voice, Aretha lifted those of millions, empowering and inspiring the vulnerable, the downtrodden, and everyone who may have just needed a little love. Aretha truly was one of a kind, and as you pay tribute, know we'll be saying a little prayer for you, and we'll be thinking of all of Aretha's loved ones in the days and weeks to come. Sincerely, Barack Obama, 44th President of the United States.
Please receive Motown great, Detroit's own, Mr. Smokey Robinson. At Levi Stubbs, the Four Tops funeral a few years ago here, Smokey had all of the Motown recording artists to come and to stand at the casket. And I looked in, I saw Ents and Walkers and gray hair and no hair. And I kept looking at them and looking at Smokey. And I said, I want what you drinking and eating. Give Smokey Robinson a hand. He'll be followed by the Clark sisters.
I didn't know where you were going to go with that. So I'm about 8 years old, and I'm outside and I'm playing with my neighborhood friends, with Sackhead and Phoebe and Ollie, and we shooting marbles because it was in a time when kids were able to play outside, you know. So I don't even know if boys know what that is anymore, but Richard Ross, another one of our friends, came around, and there's a new guy with him. And he introduced him, he said, this is Cecil. So we all, you know, like boys do, we started playing, and after a while we went around to see Cecil's new house, because they had just moved to Detroit from Buffalo. And we go in, and we're walking around the house, looking at it, and I'm seeing stuff that I had never seen, because it wasn't nearly like my house, because you know, somebody broke in my house, they better be bringing something. So, anyway, we're walking around the house, and I hear music, the piano being played, and this voice, it sounds like a little girl singing. And I go and look in our room, and I see you, and you're there, and you're singing, and that was my first meeting and my first sight of you. And from that moment on, almost we have been so close and so tight. And I didn't know, especially this soon, that I was going to be having to say goodbye to you or farewell or whatever. We've seen everybody, all the people that I mentioned earlier, pass on and go. And we talked about it many times, how we were the two who were left out of all our neighborhood friends. We were the longest ones. We weren't the only two left, but we were the longest ones. So now my longest friend has gone home, and you want to be with our Father like we all have to do one of these days. And I know you're up there and you're celebrating with your family and with all of our neighborhood friends who have gone. And you're going to be one of the featured voices in the choir of angels, because, you know, you'd have to be. also know, I've been on the road and I've been watching the celebration of your life from everywhere. And I've been doing interviews from everywhere, from all over the world. In fact, the last one I did was from Brazil. And the station that I was talking on covered all of South America. So the world is celebrating you. And the world is mourning you. And the world is going to miss you. And I know that I'm going to miss you so much because I miss our talks. And we would talk for hours sometimes, just talking about really anything we wanted to talk about or nothing. And the last conversation we had, you were telling me that you were going to do your movie. And you want to know who I wanted to play me. So I told you I was going to leave that up to you because you're so special. And a while back, we did a mini-series on the Temptations' life. And for that movie, I did a score. I did the score for the movie, and I had to write a song for Melvin Franklin, who was another one of our close people. And I'm sure he won't mind if I sing a little bit of it for you because it fits you so perfectly in my life. Really gonna miss you. It's really gonna be different without you. For the rest of my life, gonna be thinking about you. I'll miss you, my buddy. I'll miss you, my friend. I know that my love for you will never end. Will never end. And I'm gonna love you forever.